everyone, local realtor again. Aaron Morrow here in the Greater Seattle area. Bryan Laflamme here on Aaron Morrow's Living in the Greater Seattle Area Realtor Podcast. I forget what I even called this podcast. I don't remember. We're live again. We took a 1 week hiatus. I feel like Bryan and we've done a lot of these, so we're gonna just start probably doing like twice a month. Is kind of where we're
I
sitting
think so
on these
because
for you.
yeah, we want to bring
Yeah.
you guys relevant and engaging content, like that just doesn't come up every single week. And also, we have day
Definitely.
jobs and
So,
families sometimes.
You got it. So we're gonna try, especially over the summertime, we're gonna try to at least get you 2 of these a month is where we're trying to aim for. We'll see. But none of you have really complained about it yet. But if a lot of you start complaining, so I'll give you a complaint box in the description on YouTube. But today, what we're actually talking about here, I forgot to hit go live on Instagram. Just housekeeping items again. I know I do this every time, but we are live everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Clapper. Clapper peeps, you all are coming in here by the thousands and droves. Anyways, we are today talking about something that I'm sure you all have heard about, or if not, some of you have heard about. There's a big lawsuit going on right now that is most likely going to get settled with the National Association of Realtors on how commissions and compensations are settled nationwide with home sellers specifically, but it affects how you transact with a buyer's agent is essentially what we're going over. I'm going to share a lot of the headlines and a lot of the misinformation that's going on in the news right now. Bryan, why don't you take a look at some of these? So the biggest ones, again, I just keep seeing these pop up in the news. 6% commission fees for real estate agents are going away. And then
First of all, they were never here. They were never here.
Yeah.
How could they go away? They were never here.
There's no price fixing. There's
I very rarely see 6%. Both as a home seller and home buyer, and as a lender.
Yes, it's always been negotiable. People have
glibs no longer living under your bed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this other one here, Powerful Realtor Group agrees to slash commissions to settle lawsuit. So this lawsuit was pretty big. I think it was rounded up to like 1.8 billion, and the settlement is for 418 million is where it's gonna settle at, as long as the judge signs off on it, is what we're looking at here. What I mainly want to come at with this, though, is really just, especially here in Washington State, we've been very forward-thinking on how to transact with real estate here. So I know I have people watching this nationwide, but I just kind of want to break through some of the misinformation on this and just desensationalize it. I'd rather just go over the facts, why this lawsuit came about, and really get down to the heart of it, but how this could actually, the settlement itself could actually, there's some pros and cons to it as far as how it will affect us locally, because we've actually had a really good thing going on here locally in Washington State as far as transparency goes.
This kind of sets it back. Yeah. Washington was way ahead of transparency.
It does.
And this provides way less transparency than Washington.
It does. And we'll definitely get into that. So these are a ton of articles that have just a ton of misinformation, as far as like saying, a lot of these articles were like saying the seller doesn't have to pay the buyer's agent anymore. It's like, well, guess what? Like here in Washington State, they haven't had to pay the buyer's agent at all. Like
that's an important point of contention. The seller does not pay the buyer's agent and never has.
Right.
The seller pays their agent.
Right.
And pays their agent's brokerage. So Aaron, you work at Keller Williams.
Right.
The seller, when you list a house, they agree to pay Keller Williams, and then Keller Williams and you decide on a cooperating brokers agreement. Can you guys hear that ringing?
I cannot.
Okay, good.
You hear ringing? Okay.
No, it's on. I feel like I'm crazy. It's on my work cell phone number, so it comes on my computer, and I closed it out, but it keeps coming out. Doesn't matter. And then, please, this is just outsider perspective, kind of like on the outskirts, kind of obliquely related to the real estate field, of course. One step closer to consumers, but not a realtor. So this is how I understand it. Jane Seller agrees to pay Aaron Morrow and Keller Williams, excuse me, a set percentage. Aaron Morrow says, hey, that's great. My job is to sell your house. And so we're going to offer a cooperating brokers agreement to all of the agents in Washington so that we can have the most amount of buyers come and see your house. So
Right.
seller has never paid the buyer's broker. You, Aaron Morrow and Keller Williams could say, I agreed to sell your house for X percent. I'm keeping all that. I'm going to go sell your house. And that's kind of what's happening now.
Right. And if anything, Washington State made it more transparent because the
talk about what they did.
problem that this lawsuit is having is they're complaining about a lack of transparency. So one of the problems is brokers get paid too much and it's not transparent on who's getting paid what. So this lawsuit is asking for basically a decoupling of the commission. But Washington State, in my opinion, has had a better solution to the decoupling of the commission, both how we advertise it in the MLS and how we have it in both of our contracts and purchase sales agreements for years now. If you take a look at, I actually have right here.
Bring up page 1 of the purchase and sale agreement.
Well,
sorry. You do it in your order.
I'm going to show you the listing agreement first.
Good.
Right?
Okay.
Because this is where it starts. This gets to the heart of the matter here, right? On the listing agreement here, for a while, and this is probably where it's coming from nationwide. There's probably a lot of states. Again, I'm assuming because part of this lawsuit was about decoupling commission, so I'm assuming that there's a lot of states that still maybe have a listing agreement that's written how ours was years ago, that it wasn't decoupled, where it just said that one figure, like Brian's saying that it used to be where it just said right here, listing firm's compensation is 6%, basically. And then like your agent would just decide, or like you and the seller would decide how much of that would go to the buyer's agent. But it wasn't in writing. So this we've decoupled it in our contract. So right when we meet with the seller and the seller hires us to list the property, it's right here. It's plain as day. This is how much commission that the listing side will receive, and then this is how much that you as the seller now get to decide, if any, that you want to put in here now. So we actually, as Washington State, have decoupled the commission, and we made it completely optional to offer any to the buyer's agent. Now, there is a huge disadvantage to not offering any sort of buyer's agency compensation, just because if we're in it's all about supply and demand, and if we are trying to fish in a really big ocean and we want the most possible best fish, we want to cast the widest net. But not only that, we want to employ the most amount of fishermen that we can, right? I actually heard a really good agent buddy from Florida that made this analogy that I work with. And who would you rather hire? Would you rather offer you're just working with one fisherman trying to find the biggest fish, or would you also say, hey, and we have an award in place for any other fisherman out in the ocean right now with the biggest net that can find us the biggest fish, right? And if they find that fish, will they get this award? And that's what essentially that buyer's compensation is.
It's huge.
It's huge. And then I've heard other analogies that it's like if you're a restaurant and you're trying to bring in a certain amount of business to come in, so you're offering like coupons or vouchers or whatnot, so like buy one get one free or whatnot. You're incentivizing to come in to spend more into the restaurant to for that restaurant to actually make more on the sales, basically. So what's going on here is there's a lot of misinformation. One headline I didn't show that I wish I threw in here is there's a headline that I keep being thrown around that this is going to make home ownership more affordable. And where the angle that they're trying to come at is they're trying to say collectively all sellers nationwide are going to agree to stop offering the buyer side compensation, which actually basically just makes it where it's more affordable to sell a house, right? They're saying like there's less costs involved selling a house. And then, but they're also saying in this particular weird made up, like completely made up, like hypothetical nationwide, everyone's going to get on board with this. All of the sellers are going to agree on the honor system to just basically reduce what their house cost should be, the purchase price, by whatever that amount would be, like that average
okay,
3%.
Let me offer
right?
another perspective too.
Right.
Okay, so I don't think I am. I worked in the government for years, so I don't think I'm stepping on any toes or speaking out of turn for people who are inside or outside of the government. That when the government gets involved, especially on a macro level, rarely does it end up the way they intended it. So saying, hey, if the seller knows 6%, 3 to the seller's agent, 3 to the buyer's agent, my house, for round numbers, we're going to say it's 500,000. So 6% is 30 grand, 15 each. And if they say, well, now I only have to offer 3%, so I can reduce the price of my house by 15 grand. But to your point, yeah, right. But they're actually reducing the price of their house way more than that, because now instead of having whatever tens of thousands of realtors that are a member of the Northwest MLS and other MLS systems where it may be posted, and real estate agents that are in Washington who have buyers calling them all of the time to go look at houses, instead of having an army of people bringing demand to the seller's house, they now have whoever Jane, Joe, realtor can find on their own who needs this exact house in this exact place and can afford this exact price. How lucky do you have to get? So
Yeah.
It is going to depress pricing if it is not implemented intelligently. And I think that's where a lot of the fear comes. A lot of the fear on the agent side is, oh my gosh, one, I have to develop a new skill set. I have to be able, from a buyer side, to be able to articulate my value much sooner than I had to before, because a buyer's agent normally has their value proven throughout the process, and that's fine because a seller is paying the listing agent, and the listing agent's firm is sharing with the selling agent's firm. So they're proving
the vast majority of houses,
the vast majority, not all,
for a cooperating commission. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the buyer has to say, or the buyer's agent has to say to the buyer, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, Mr. and Mr. Homebuyer, Mrs. Whomever you are, hey, homebuyer, this is my compensation. Please trust me that I'm going to earn it. It's a big hurdle to get over, and I have so much empathy for people in your position, because while someone from the inside can see your value, articulating that's a different skill set. But you also now have sellers of misinformation saying, well, I have to pay less so I can get more. I promise you you're going to get less. It's just the way human nature and economics work.
And now we have a situation where there are some buyers out there that believe that if I don't work with a buyer's agent because I know what I'm doing, and there are buyers out there that they don't need a buyer's agent.
I don't know, man. I've bought a lot of houses. I do hundreds of loans a year. I would never buy without an agent. Ever.
I know. I'm making the devil's advocate because you have no idea how many trolls I'm seeing out there on this right now while I'm researching this topic. But for all of those experienced peeps out there that don't need a buyer's agent, they believe in their heart of hearts they are gonna go to the seller, and the seller is gonna pass the savings on to them of what the seller is saving by not offering the co-op. But the seller wants to pocket that savings, not give it to you, the buyer. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, maybe very rare instance, if it's like an off-market deal where each other, and that's fine. Like if you know your neighbor and you want to do that and you want to hire an attorney, but I'd still say you get things in writing. You gotta hire professional representation no matter what.
I
Whether
would.
you're working with realtors, you're working with an attorney, get it. Get
We say a lot of
professional
this podcast, adults are going to do what adults are going to do. And that's what we live in a country where, for the most part,
Yeah.
that's okay. I wouldn't do that.
Right.
Giving all the
agree.
information I know, that's not a thing I would do. So this
So
is a big deal, but it's a less of a big deal than I think people are making it out. But it's in Washington more of a big deal because it is a step back in transparency.
Yes, and that's what we wanted to get to, because one thing real quick, I'm going to blast through the best article that I found that is cutting through the misinformation, and this is the best article that I found that really kind of just
I sent this to an
lays
AI
it all
translator.
out. Yeah. I'm
You
sorry,
sent it
what'd
to
you
me.
say?
I was like, I sent this article through an AI translator when you sent it to me.
Oh, you did?
It was great. I read it, then I sent it to the translator. I'm like, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm.
Really? So it was written in a way that you were still like, okay, I'm gonna have a double check and make sure.
No, I just wanted to kind of see how it worked, and it said the same thing.
Yeah.
I just want to throw it
Okay.
out there because kind of cool.
Okay, so yeah, like real quick, I thought we might read through just some of it and blast through
Let's
it.
do it.
So, number one, the settlement forces brokers to reduce their compensation, which is false. The settlement in no way establishes a standard or limitation on realtors for what they may charge, nor services they elect to deliver. Those fees are always been negotiable, and there has never been any collective bargaining. In every market, there's a wide variety of fees, just as there are a level of marketing services and competence. Now,
yeah.
I
Can we
will
talk about
even
that?
say, for devil's advocate, because there's a lot of people that are like naysayers out there that are saying no, there's some price fixing going on because it's such a narrow band. And the problem is it's just a market of supply and demand. You have a lot of realtors that, when there's technology involved and what it costs to run and keep business going, to work as a realtor in this market, to work with clients both on buyers and sellers side, yes, everything is negotiable on those fees, but what it costs in a profession that it's one of the few professions that you only get paid when you've performed and you've closed on something, and there's no other payment guarantees or anything in this profession. There is a range out there, and you could statistically add it up to come up and draw your own conclusion of a standard range that's out there in any market, and every market might have a varying range, but most markets probably have a more narrow band, so I'm just throwing this out there. Like, you might find in your own research that a market probably has a narrow band between 4 to 6% total commission around for both a buyer and seller side, is what you find for the majority of sales and transactions.
So can we talk about that? Because that's an
Yeah.
economic reality of the equilibrium of pricing that goes all the way back to the invisible hand, like of economics. You will find throughout the country that we have a pretty similar pricing from Seattle, Washington to Clearwater, Florida. You will find in Germany they have different pricing. In Canada they have different pricing.
Yes.
Like, the market, if it's not transparent, how come? And their transparency can be established more fully, and Washington had done that, which we're going to get to later. Just keep teasing it. But we have been about 4 to 6%, I can attest to that, and that is what the market bears. And if that's what the market bears, that's what the market pays. If the market would pay 9%, you better believe a capitalist society would take 9%. If the market only paid 2%, you better believe that people would be getting to 2% so that they could still have business to run their clients to run their business with. So yeah, we have a band.
By the way, all credit to this article right here. I'm showing it right in here for fair use. This is the article Budge Husky.
Way to go, Budge. Oh, his name is Budge Husky. Yes,
yeah,
it is.
Pro says, don't believe National Association of Realtors settlement myths. Because there's a lot of misinfo out there. So Number two, the settlement will, for the first time, allow sellers to no longer pay compensation for an agent bringing the buyer. So that's false. There's never been an obligation for a seller to pay buyer agent compensation, yet it is a practice that has worked well. A past rule requiring an offer of some amount of compensation was a rule of display on realtor-owned MLSs, yet it could have been as low as $1. That limitation was removed, and today the MLS accepts all listings regardless of buyer agent considerations. So, yes, this was one of the other complaints, that even the MLS forcing it as being as low as $1, that still technically makes them pay something towards the buyer's agent side. Again,
it makes me feel like it was just like to me, it makes me feel like it was just like a coding issue. Like, we got to put something in there, and we don't want to rewrite code. So
our MLS for the last couple of years has had it where you can put 0 in there, and we've seen in Washington State there's been a few zeros. There's
I asked a buddy about that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I asked a buddy about that years ago. Sorry, we keep talking to each other. It's a great podcast.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're doing great.
Yeah.
I asked a buddy about that a while ago. Like, hey, what are you going to do if a buyer that you've been working with for a while, because as you know, when you work with buyers, you work for free, as with sellers, but with buyers more, it's more discreetly free because they may never close. A seller is almost certainly going to sell their house eventually. I was like, what are you going to do if they show you a house that has 0% commission? The seller's not willing to increase, the listing agent's not willing to share, and the buyer doesn't have the money to pay. And he's like, look, man, this is how I feed my family. I do this for a living. I'm a professional. If somebody wants me to work for free, they're just not my client. Like, when I go to a listing agreement and they don't want to pay what I feel my value is after I show everything that I bring to the table, I refer them to, a couple of, very inexpensive. We put your house in the MLS, and that's all we do. Brokerages. I
have that too. So I have those referrals set up that I
Here's your
to that if that's what they're looking for.
That's what you want. Here you go.
They've analyzed what the value that I bring to the table, what I can bring both as a buyer's agent or a listing agent, and we're not a good fit. I have someone I can refer them to if really they're stuck up on if they're stuck on the upfront costs versus what they actually get as the return on investment. So,
and if this wasn't already negotiable, if commissions weren't already negotiable, those sorts of companies would not exist.
Right.
How would they exist?
Hey guys, we're educating you. There's actually plenty of companies out there that there's flat fee MLS brokerages where you can pay like a flat fee service like $500 to go for sale by owner and still get your house listed on the MLS.
That's all they do. It's for sale by owner.
You do for sale by owner. You do your own.
Hold the opens.
And hey, I will short plug, guys. I'm actually, if anyone's listening to this and they're curious and want to learn how to do that, I actually host I do this every once in a while. So reach out to me if you are dead set and you're like, I want to sell my house for sale by owner, but I'd like to kind of learn how to do it correctly. I actually teach a class on that. So if anyone would like to learn what it takes to sell and list your house properly on your own without paying agents, reach out to me. I'm throwing that out there. I'm probably going to get a lot of heat from other agents on that, but I'll show you exactly what it takes, every step you need to do, what I do to basically replace the agent if you want to do the work yourself. And
I'll tell you what, man. Yeah, nobody who is not confident in their skills can provide something like that.
No.
Hey, I can help you do this because I'm confident that, that you're going to get value from this, or you're going to get value from my full service. And I think that it's pretty obvious that people are going to get more money from your full service. If they don't see it that way, that doesn't mean they don't get served.
Yeah, exactly. So reach out to me if you're interested in that too, and I can get you on my next webinar that I host for that. But one thing I wanted to point out, because Brian is, I know I'm ping-ponging on here, but I'll show you the buyer broker agreement that we have as of Washington State. Actually, before I do that, the thing that I want to point out that I do not like about this the settlement the most is my issue with the transparency. So the biggest thing on this lawsuit is, where is it? So right here. So, did it say? Okay, the settlement prohibits sellers from paying a commission to a buyer's agent and relieves sellers of financial burden. False. The mandate restricts properties with an offer of buyer agent compensation from displaying on the association owned MLS, yet the practice can't be
What the heck,
restricted
right?
in any other form of marketing. Sellers may still elect to pay buyer's agent compensation to differentiate their properties. So savvy sellers that want to set their property apart are going to have a strong listing agent that knows how to market this properly. I mean, you're a buyer's agent, so what it's going to do now, let me explain this, guys, because Washington State was at the forefront, one of arguably the most transparent states as far as transparency on,
The
like,
North
in
MLS saw
Washington
this
State.
coming and took
Yeah.
appropriate action.
Yes,
for sure,
we've been
years
very
ago.
proactive on this. In Washington State, you can go on our listings, like you as the public can go to public sites like Zillow, Redfin. You can go on there and the commission will be advertised of what your buyer's agent is going to be paid or offered from the seller. That's completely transparent. That is going away from the settlement of this lawsuit. They are rolling it back to hide that behind a curtain now, where that will no longer be advertised on an MLS. So
Can we stop there? Can we stop
Yeah.
there for a second?
Yeah.
It's mind numbing. This is what I meant by the government's implementation is never their intentions. Well, not never, but in this case, mostly. They say this is for transparency. The settlement was, it reached in, and now the DOJ is weighing in, and the DOJ is making it even more restrictive, it seems. But they're making it less transparent. They're saying you can't say what you're going to pay.
Right.
Or if you're going to pay for
Right.
transparency. So
Right.
what? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't. Okay. I want to be transparent with you right now, Aaron.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That was me being transparent the way that the
Oh,
settlement
yeah,
wants
of
me to be
course, of course.
transparent.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
need to tell you something, but I'm not going to tell you for transparent. What the
Yeah,
heck?
you're not gonna actually tell me in full transparency.
What's happening?
Yeah, I know. And so what it's gonna do is now your buyer's agent is gonna have an extra step when you're working with them to make, basically, if it's not advertised anymore, your buyer's agent is gonna have to make a phone call to figure out if there's any sort of compensation offered, if the seller has agreed to or disclosed it. And then it has to be put
Imagine
in
you had to go
because-
into work every day and call your boss and say, "Hey, am I getting paid today?" That's
Yeah,
what it
I
is.
know.
Or not even that. Say you have deliveries that you're making as a FedEx person, right? And you got a call between each delivery and say, "Hey, am I going to get paid for this? Hey, am I going to get paid for this? Hey, am I going to?" That's what's happening.
Yep, exactly. You had a good point, because I'm gonna bring up I'm gonna show everyone on real quick where it is on the PSA, because that's still gonna be in there where you can let me bring this up real quick. Okay, so PSA right
You guys
here.
see that picture of Aaron Morrow on his
Superman. Anyways, so this is yeah, I have not changed my Chrome background since I was like in high school. Let's see here. So this is the purchase and sale agreement, and right here, this is where it explains. Let me see if I can make this bigger. There we go. Okay, so right here, buyer. My mouse is on here. I forget where my mouse is. It's kind of trippy doing this stream thing.
Yeah.
So right here,
Line
this is
17.
where you put the compensation as offered. So you just find out what it is, and you'd still just put it here. So it's going to be transparent once you're making the offer, and we put it.
It already
together
was
with it.
transparent. This isn't line 17 is not new to Washington.
Right. This is in there already.
We're already doing it.
So we're not changing this up, but what is going to change from this is, from my understanding of all the research I've done, is one thing that they are changing is how we currently have our buyer broker agreement set up and ours is one of the I've been told by some other agents sending this around, and some other real estate attorneys in other countries that, or not countries, other states, that we actually have one of the best buyer agency agreements for for the for our state. And with this one, because it's the most thorough, it's the most like crystal clear on what it means, and there's so many lines here of explaining how your buyer agent will not only work for you, but how they get paid, exactly how they get paid in like every situation.
So can we drive home this point that we're not saying that one, buyer's agent shouldn't be paid, or two, buyers shouldn't know how and how much they're paid. We're not saying that. We're saying this makes that harder. We're saying that's what was already happening, and the new settlement, if it continues the way it has been settled to already, if that continues on, it's doing the opposite.
This does make it harder because how it used to be is the majority of the time now, a lot of agents, I know there's a lot of agents out there that probably never bothered to get one of these signed in other states, and they just went off of like, building up the rapport and getting the buyer to go under contract, and 99% of the time they found a house where the seller was offering some sort of compensation. It worked out. But now this makes it crystal clear, because part of the in Washington State, actually, as of the beginning of this year, they made it mandatory that a buyer has to sign one of these before a buyer's agent starts performing buyer's agent services.
It used to be optional and have zero teeth. So a listing agreement.
Now it has teeth. Now your agent is definitely operating outside of their licensure if they're performing broker services for you without signing this. Now, I mean, you can. So there's so many different ways to go about this. If you're concerned now, like as a buyer, like, well, I don't want to just sign with first Joe Blow I've ever met, and I haven't properly researched him, because there's a lot of agents that have a model of finding the buyer through just like a quick open house or like a
Zillow lead
real quick. They've never met before, and so like this is going to disrupt a lot of models. So like Zillow's model of charging a lot of money for their leads, like up to like sometimes I hear like $1,000 per lead, or Zillow has like a referral. Just to also make this really transparent, guys, Zillow also has like a flex program where agents have signed up, where instead of paying up front for leads, they're going to pay a referral fee on the back end for their buyers, but they're actually giving Zillow 40% of the commission.
Maybe we touch on that.
That's what we call it in Washington State. I'm going to say compensation. Whenever I say compensation, in other states it means commission. But in Washington State it means compensation. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. But buyers are going to be reluctant to want to sign one of these before they go just see a property, right? But a way to get around that to build rapport is an agent could have a buyer sign an exclusive agreement just for that property to, and then like say, hey, we've seen a couple of these and we can either just keep doing this, or now it's time to figure out, do you want to work with me or not, and like actually sign a real one of these. I mean,
signing a buyer's agency agreement off Zillow, of meeting an agent from Zillow, is like proposing on a first online dating date. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what the unintended consequence of this can be. Because like, speak to this before, if you sign a listing agreement with a seller, between a seller and an agent, and they decide, Aaron, I don't want to work with you anymore, you could say, well, we have a 6-month listing agreement. You cannot list your house with another agent within the next 6 months, or there's A, B, and C recourse. That's been the case for a while. The buyer's agency agreement was always, hey, will you sign this so that, we have a formal relationship, they're working together. But if they decide to go work with another buyer's agent, there's really no recourse that you had.
Yeah, like basically on the buyer side, if they just decided to like say, all they had to do is just give you a written notice that they no longer wish to work with you.
Text or email is fine, yeah.
Yeah, and all you were protected with was any houses you showed them prior, is basically, because the language in there is like it's supposed to protect that buyer's agent for like any house that they sent through the MLS, but it's really hard to follow the digital paper trail, and that'd be really like, who are you going to go after at that point? If a buyer wants to burn you that hard on that one transaction, they weren't a good client, a good fit. And
to begin
it's
with.
best to not go after them. Like, I mean, I've never gone after anyone for screwing me over,
No, you never want to be the guy who sued your client.
Yeah.
And
so that's,
like, not only do I not want that reputation, I don't want that energy in my life. Okay, you don't want to work with me.
No,
I
I
wish you the
just
best.
rather figure out who's not we're not a good fit, like from the jump. That's like, that's my whole goal, is to figure out, hey, let's figure out real quick if you think I'm good for you and I'm good for you, quicker than down the road.
Yeah, can we touch on one other thing? So this buyer's agency agreement is now, when you sit down with a client, there's some goods and bads. The bad is it's got some teeth before they really get to know you. The good is now it is transparent what your services are and what your compensation is.
Yep, and you explain it and you thoroughly go over.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what Washington was already doing, because you guys had this buyer broker service in the beginning of the year that you had to have signed, they were had the buyer's agent's compensation on the contract. But outside of that, the increased transparency they had is what NAR is taking away. They had the buyer's agency compensation listed on the NMLS for
publicly.
For you.
So you knew
publicly, not privately.
You
and so when you
knew if your agent was steering you or not. Because the whole thing, this whole complaint is they're worried about agents steering clients away from those properties. Washington State has it as public, transparent knowledge.
The main point of what Washington was doing, not only was it on the MLS for agents to see, and for people, like when you sent them MLS forms, like when you looked on Redfin or some other site for a house, it says right on there on that website, buyer's compensation to be. The buyer's compensation is, and it says so. The buyers
at least
knew.
In Washington State.
Yeah.
The problem is some other states did not have it set up this way, but really, they should have looked at what Washington State was doing and just said, "Hey, this is what we should adopt nationwide." That's my hot take on this. Because now what's going to happen?
That's what gets me.
We are going to have to actually restructure our buyer broker agreement if I'm interpreting the research that I've done correctly. And at first I didn't think we had to, but now I've done some more digging on it, and it sounds like, because at first we had a good thing going here. How it was written, we were very crystal clear on this about basically this agreement is set up to explain myself as an agent. This is the minimum I am going to get paid for working with you if I help you close on a property, no matter what, whether it comes from the seller or you. Someone is going to pay me at least minimum X amount once we close. And we've explained it up front, and the buyer understands in my, I'm blanking on the word here. My
compensation, your value, your compensation.
Well, yeah, like when I do my consultation with the buyer. So we explain this out, but it also explains in there, because everything's negotiable. So notice in here in Washington State, this can be exclusive or non-exclusive. This could be your agent can say, this is how the minimum I'm going to get paid. So like, let's say your agent
exclusive or non-exclusive. That means that makes it mean nothing.
Yeah, it makes it mean nothing. Like, it's literally just to protect. And I can tell you that unless it's a very specific circumstances, there's not an agent that knows their worth and is gonna deliver their time isn't gonna be agreeing to non-exclusive.
Shoot, I wouldn't enter in an agreement with my boss and say,
hey, it's not a good fit.
It's not a good fit. Hey, boss, you're going to pay me, maybe, or you're not. Or the boss is like, hey, you're going to come, or maybe no.
Right.
Like,
but so this agreement explains the agent and you negotiate and set what the minimum amount is that your agent states that they will be compensated at closing. Uh, in the event, and then it also explains, like in a very rare instance, that if there's dual agency involved, that you and the seller have to pre-agree to. That would be in the event that you find an off-market deal or like a for sale by owner where you want now your agent to represent both parties. I actually don't do dual agency. What I do is I write the agreements to explain that I in a for sale by owner situation, I will be my buyer's representation, and I can facilitate sending the paperwork for the seller to sign, but I'm not going to give them any sort of transactional advice or real estate advice on their end. They either need to hire their own representation, or um, it's not going to work,
Yeah.
because I represent my buyer, in if we're working on a with a buyer, but that's what that is there for. This agreement also is thorough because it explains in the event that it explains what happens where if you find a property where the seller's is offering a buyer's compensation where it's more than what your agent has explained what their minimum is that they need, right? Or what their
Mm-hmm.
compensation is. Who does that go to? It's negotiable. You can either right here clearly say your agent might want you to agree that it goes to them, for the hard work that they've done, or you get it credited back to you as a buyer, or it's all negotiable here. This part, by the way, is going to probably go away. It's going to be restructured because the settlement has explained that it has to be basically it's like there's no double dipping. It has to be a
Mm-hmm.
specific amount that your agent has stated is their compensation no matter what, whether they get all or some from the seller or you, but they cannot get no more than that. So here's the other thing that you're going to run into as a practice. There's a lot of agents in our state that like say, I know this because they want to lighten the burden with their buyers, is they'll set their minimum amount a little bit lower than like 3%, for instance, right? They don't go for the 3 right at first, right? Some agents go for 3 or 4, whatever. It's all negotiable, right?
Hey man, shoot your
Uh,
shot.
but now you cannot go back up because if your agent on the new hiring agreement, it's going to state basically if the settlement makes if basically Washington State adopts the same practices that the settlement is asking for, um, is basically now your agent is just saying let's say 2.5% just to make numbers. Your agent saying I'm going to get 2.5% no matter what. If you now go to a property that seller is actually offering 3% as a buyer's comp that they found out through back channels now because it cannot be on the MLS.
For
That agent,
transparency.
yeah, that agent has no recourse to take the other half. There's no like, it will go to the buyer now, or who knows, maybe the seller just gets to pocket it
I
the
don't know
same
how.
as,
No, for
I
lending,
don't
we
know.
haven't
We
even
don't
said
because
whether
the
or not it
forms
can
haven't been
go.
created yet for it yet. So
FHA has said, "Hey, we're watching this, and we don't think
yeah,
think that we'll be able to be a closing cost or a
right,
credit to the buyer."
right.
VA has already said is forever said no, you can't roll agent compensation into closing costs, and Fannie and Freddie haven't really commented on it yet. It is going to work out
And
where
yeah,
agent commissions will
VA,
be
you
able to be
can't.
rolled
So
in.
that was the other thing I
Not
wanted to point
yet.
out. Yeah, so the other thing I wanted to point out is this article here. I had to copy and paste it because it was really hard. It was actually in my email, and I don't want to show off my email because I've got a lot of client
No, you
sensitive
can't.
data in there.
Hmm.
Anyways, so this is called Hozo or Hazoo.com. This was breaking. This was an interesting one. I got this last week. It was talking about the MLS's responses nationwide to what's going on, because it's basically like NAR like stating, okay, this is what we'll settle on, But then the MLSs, because some of the MLSs aren't NAR owned, like Northwest MLS, it's actually group member owned, not it's not owned by NAR. So like even our local MLS here on Western Washington side, did I say that right? Yeah, Western Washington side. Um, so like here, some things I want to point out. The filing asked the court to disregard the DOJ's statement of interest. The council states that DOJ's recommendations won't have the impact it intends and may harm the consumer's interests. The DOJ just suggests ban on sellers offering compensation to buyer brokers would violate antitrust laws. And then the policy may adversely impact first-time home buyers, lower income buyers, and minorities. Because here's
100% will.
This will make it, no matter what, there are going to be more situations where a buyer is going to have to figure out who they're hiring. And even if they wanted the proper representation, their agent might require a minimum compensation that now the buyer feels like would be a little too risky to work with if they can't find a house that... Anyways, go ahead.
So let's talk about that. If they say the seller cannot pay at all, because that's price fixing, so it has to come from the buyer. What you've just done is you have either taken, let's say 10 grand, $10,000 buyer agent compensation. We can get into where all that money goes in the future. The buyer, Aaron Morrow, doesn't get $10,000 when he sells your house as a buyer. Like, it goes to a lot of different places in your own business. So, but let's just say it's 10 grand. So you have done now down payment, closing costs, and $10,000 of buyer agent compensation. A buyer, a first-time buyer, a low to moderate income buyer is going to say, I can't afford those. I'm not doing it. So either I'm out of the housing market, it's not going to happen, or now I'm going to go and I'm going to work with a person who has a first and fiduciary responsibility to another party, the seller. I'm going to work with the seller's agent who represents the seller first and cannot negotiate on your behalf in good faith because they represent the seller. And if they do that to you, they're not giving it to the seller. They could lose their license. That's what's setting up. This is what I've talked about. Intent may be good. Implementation so far is atrocious.
Yep. Now, so the one thing I will stick our own state to is I think dual agency should be outlawed.
I do too.
There's other states that do dual agency better. So, for instance, Colorado, where I actually came from, I was licensed in Colorado for 2 years before I came back to Washington because I've been a Washingtonian all my life, except for 2 years while my wife was going through her master's degree. In Colorado, it has the contract set up where you switch from a fiduciary to what's called just a transactional broker. Basically, it forces you into not giving any agency to either party.
You're like an escrow company.
You're just facilitating. Yeah.
You guys fight it out.
That outlaw it too. So, but these are the two things that are floating around online the three things are either basically buyer can go directly to the listing agent, and the listing agent will now represent the transaction for them, or the buyer can go do all their shopping through open houses and then hire a real estate attorney to write up the offer for them. The problem with that model is the real estate attorney isn't gonna. They're not paid on performance. You're gonna get charged every offer they write for you.
So let's stop on that for a second.
Closing. Yeah,
let's stop on that for a second. Your lawyer will be paid to write the contract.
Right.
Your realtor is paid when the house closes.
Right.
So, especially in a market that we've been in for the past 4 years, where buyers have had, it's more common to have more than one offer put in before one is accepted than it is to just have your first offer accepted. So you're paying for offer after offer after offer after offer, as opposed to only paying at the end once the service that Aaron Morrow promised to you for compensation, which was to ensure that you close on a house and have possession of that house, that you're a homeowner. That's when Aaron gets paid. The lawyer gets paid to write the contract, whether or not it ends up being accepted or fully executed through closing.
Yeah, exactly.
Big deal. Big difference.
And you could, in a competitive market, especially if you're not the type of buyer that wants to give away your firstborn, or you're in situations where
I mean, some days I want to.
yeah. It- well, Brian, you got like 6 of them. You can't like
Yeah.
miss all of them all the time, right? No.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, you could loan one. No. Anyways, uh, if you're the type of situation where you're not in a, that might work for some markets. If you're in a market where you're like closer to a neutral, or dare I say it, buyer's market, which would be I mean, that would be amazing if there was a huge shift like that. But here, reality in the Seattle area, it's just not that. Like, it's been hard seller's market forever, and after COVID, really hard. Last year let up a little bit, but still not neutral. Like, you, if a house is priced right, still went
I
like
tell you what, the
hotcakes.
only
And right
way we
now,
get to a buyer's market is if rates
yeah,
continue to stay higher for longer. And if that happens, we're going to, as we've seen, an increase in inventory, but we're coming from really, really low levels. So don't be fooled. That's the only way. And so that still then means that, houses are expensive.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, I think this is gonna. So my main thing about this is, guys, nothing's really changed. The only thing that they're like, there's a lot of misinformation about it, and all they're doing is actually just rolling back some cool things that Washington State has been doing for
Can you go
us.
back to those headlines that you had at the very beginning?
Yeah, yeah,
I want to make 1 point twice, 1 point in 2 ways.
yeah.
You talked about it could cost upwards of $1,000 per lead through Zillow, or 40% of your compensation at closing. You guys,
Yep.
Zillow is free to you because you're the product. They're selling
Yes.
your information to people so that those people can then serve you in
Well,
real estate. So
agents
you're
are
the
the
product.
product. Like, they're like, yeah,
Agents are the
agents
customer. Yeah, agents are the customer who
right.
are paying Zillow.
Yeah.
Like,
You're the product. Yeah, you're the
you're
product
the
for the
pro.
agent.
You're being
Yeah.
sold
Yep.
now.
Yeah.
So you're being sold now. That same way on these headlines. Powerful realtor group agrees to slash commissions and settle lawsuits. That is patently false. Aaron has gone over that. It's patently untrue. But you are the product. They need your eyes. They need you to make money. They sell advertising space, and the only way they sell that is if you, the product, are there to click on it. 6% commission fees for real estate agents are going away. What to know about the new rule? 6% commission fee for real estate agents was never a thing to go away. There's been a band, like Aaron talked about between 4% and 6%. Some are more, some are low. I rarely see 6%.
And the other thing I was going to point out here, this is good too. The MLS, look at this data here. So in their state, so MLS data refutes this. Its commission offers have been gradually decreasing since the year 2000 at the rate of 0.4% per year. However, since the rule changes were implemented, the rate of decline increased to an average of 1.5% per year, as reported by Inman.
So I'm going to tell you why that is. It's pretty simple economics in a capitalist system. Prices have gone up for houses. So because of that, compensation has gone up because it's based off of percentage. So in order to compensate for that, compensation has come down to a lower percentage. That's what the market has told realtors will happen, because realtors go in an interview to list these houses, and then a seller chooses that realtor that they're going to have represent them. So the market talks. Secondly, selling houses has become, 2020, 2021, a part of 2022, a little bit easier than it was before in this really hot buyer's market. So you had less qualified competition, and so the market came down to meet that. Now, as realtors leave the industry, as less qualified realtors continue to leave the industry, competition will almost certainly increase, because now you're working with a higher quality person. You're shopping at Nordstrom. You're not shopping at Ross. Now, you can still go shop at Ross if you want. Both will sell you clothes. There is a big difference on what clothes you get and how you're treated when you're there and the value you get from it. So the market already spoke. The MLS has the data. It's just data. It just is. And MLS has the data that says, actually, the market was already speaking to us, and this is what the market was saying. How in the world is that not transparent? The market's doing it. So,
Right.
I mean, I think that's what frustrates me the most. It's already was happening, and
it
we were
also
already
frustrates
transparent.
me too because this lawsuit has kind of done since it's class action, it's done a blanket where like hundreds of or like thousands of agents, their clients over the last couple of years, they've been receiving these mailers that like are
Mhm.
basically like stating you might have overpaid whether you were on the buyer or seller side.
Can I
And
make
then
a?
like
Can I make
it's
a? Yeah.
damaging relationships to like agents that actually like know like
Well,
we
can I make a point about that?
go ahead. Yeah.
You were harmed, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Seller.
Yeah.
You were harmed. You deserve compensation. Your realtor was a snake oil salesperson and wasn't clear about what they got paid. So we should sue them. Oh, that sounds great. So I'm going to get all my money back. Well, you're going to get like $10 because a lot of people are suing them.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
between
okay.
10 or
Yeah.
$21, but then the lawyers
Wait, okay, lawyers, how much are you getting? You
it's
know,
like 33% of the like
it's like
millions.
$80 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're telling, and
Yeah.
you
And they're
lawyers
talking
are
about
telling us
we
that
cost
agents
too much.
are making too much?
Yeah. Anyways.
It's an obvious money grab. Now, please, I don't want to come off as flippant about this. A lot of places can be much better at being transparent about the value you're getting and what you're paying for it.
Of course.
Because there's a cost and a benefit to everything. Washington was just already there, and that's the most frustrating thing. And we did it better. You knew when you looked on whatever website you were looking on what your agent was getting paid. You signed an agreement, and the seller signed an agreement to know this is what I'm paying, and this is where the money is going. Like that already happened when you signed a contract to make an offer, and when a seller reviewed a contract for that offer on page 1 was where the compensation was going to the buyer's agent, or how much compensation was going to the buyer's agent. Over and over and over and over again, buyers were told this in an effort and a really good effort to be transparent. And I think a really well executed, and this sets us back. That is what's most frustrating, and that's why maybe we might come off as flippant sometimes about this. It's not that it wasn't a real problem. It's just that we had solved it way better, and now our hands are being tied, and we're being taken back, and you are being harmed as a consumer in Washington now.
And we're gonna do the best we can with the laws that come through and what they make us do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think now more than ever, especially whether you're working on the seller side or the buyer side, everything's negotiable. But like really like interview who you're working with. You know, like
every time, yeah.
Don't like. I don't. So when I tell my clients, I'm like, especially if they weren't referred to me, but like even if they were, like I treat every client the same. Where it's, hey, I don't expect you to just go on blind face trusting me. So like I've worked very hard to build up what I call social proof, to put it out there, to be as transparent as possible, so you know what I'm about. You can see my videos, my personality, how I can help you. But then here's a playlist of what 20 other clients have said about working with me, what the process has been like.
Well, I'll tell you why that's so powerful too, because you are
so. If that's not enough, oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You go ahead.
No, you finish. You finish.
I was gonna say, and if that's not enough for you, would you like a list of references from clients that know, like, and trust me, that have said, Aaron, you have done a fantastic job for me, enough that I would like to be on your reference sheet. If anyone calls me or emails me, I'd be happy to tell them what it was like working with you.
So there's 2 points about that I want to make. One is, of course, everybody's going to give out the people that will say good things about them. Yeah, duh. However, doing such a good job that people are willing to say good things about you, that reframe is very important. And you are so active online that you are an open target for people who want to say bad things about you. And you don't have a whole lot of that. Like you don't have, you have trolls, but there's some people, like nobody bats 1,000. Sometimes there's, somebody has a poor, despite your best intentions, someone could, not you, but other people could have a poor experience or have a perceived poor experience. They also get to have their voice heard because you're just out there. And there's just not a lot of that. So the point of, Aaron sent me, people that know, like, and trust him. Well, there's a lot of people that know, like, and trust him. So that makes sense. And these people are willing to put their reputation online for you.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Same with you, Brian. So.
No. Nobody is.
No. Anyways,
Smart.
I guess that's my hot take or my big takeaway. We will see what the fallout is of this. They're mentioning like the earliest that these changes could roll out is like mid-July, but it might be a little bit later because
Which is lightning fast.
Yeah, yeah. So
Stupidly fast.
we'll see what happens, and we'll see how the market reacts to it. So, I mean, here's at the end of the day, like if I'm working with, I'm not gonna turn down a VA buyer because they want to get into a home. Like they're gonna know that I've got their back, and if we're in a situation like they're not gonna lose the house over this. There's
a lot of things I do
negotiate.
for no money because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you put you put enough karma, the right things to do, it all comes back to you one way or another.
You can negotiate your agent's fee into the pricing when you're making your offer and your escalations and stuff. So like
there's a negotiation for that.
There's ways to get the seller to agree to it, even in a multiple offer situation, if you're in one. And I mention that just because more often than not, that's what's going on in this market. You know? Yeah. So, guys,
right,
I mean, that's all we
Covered
got
it.
for you. I mean, it was good. I thought this was going to be a tight 45 minutes, but I think we were a little lively on it. So, thank you so much.
Tight hour, 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It was better than my 1 hour, 50-minute spiel on how to write a good offer.
Contracts.
You know? So, thanks again for coming. Again, Aaron Morrow, local realtor, Greater Seattle area. I work with home buyers and sellers, King, Pierce, Snohomish counties. But if you're nationwide, I have a really good referral network. I've got over like 3,000 agents that I'm connected with in every state, every major city, anywhere you name it. So if you want someone that is already well trained and puts customer satisfaction first, people first, relationship based first, if that's the type of realtor you're looking to work with nationwide, please reach out to me. I'd like to have a consultation or a conversation with you so I can get you connected to the right people. And Brian here,
Washington
awesome
resident.
mortgage guy. He's, again, Washington State, Oregon, and some other place. I don't know. But, yeah, so.
Doesn't matter. We'll help you and we'll refer you out if we can't help you.
What was it,
Mississippi.
Oh, there you go. Not even close. Yeah. Okay,
Doesn't
guys.
matter. Flyovers.
Well, it was good seeing you all. Please reach out if you have any questions. And until next time, we will see you on the next one real soon.